I'm Jackie.
And I'm Ashley. Welcome back to Dumb Witch Club.
Hi. Welcome back.
Welcome back. Happy summer.
Happy summer. I know. I feel like we're very summer vibes right now.
Yeah, I'm embracing it. I'm choosing. Yeah. I was gonna tell you that today, and then I'm like, how am I gonna say this?
How are you gonna spring this on me?
Yeah, and then now I'm like, you know what? We need to just embrace the fact that I read a quote the other day. It was like, I forget who it was attributed to, but it said, let July be July and let August be August. And like everything is unfolding as it's supposed to be, or some whatever thing.
Well, first of all, I'm astounded because...
I know.
Look, I have a summer birthday, as we all know. Okay, so I'm supposed to be like, it's my birthday, it's summer, it's amazing.
You are.
And I love my birthday, whatever.
Of course.
But summer is not it.
No, summer is not it.
It is not it for goths.
No.
It is not it for witches.
It's not.
It's just not it.
No.
So... this is astounding. I am amazed. And I love that little quote or whatever it is because it's such a good reminder that this just is what it is.
It is what it is.
It's okay.
It's okay. It's necessary.
And it's temporary.
And it might not be our favorite, but that doesn't mean that, look, if we didn't have it, then we wouldn't have the other things. If you start to extrapolate that out, right? It's like, if you don't have this, then you wouldn't have fall, then you wouldn't have the things that we have to deal with it. We have learned to deal with it better than we ever did in the past.
That is very true. I think back 10 years ago, 9, 8, Lord.
We were a mess.
Would just, literally languish. And
I would come over into your house and just sprawl across that section of your couch and not move.
No, I know. We would just lay head to head on the corner of the couch and just be like, what are we going to do? What are we doing?
Who are we? What
and
are
like,
we?
I don't know.
I don't
know. No, I know. So it's better than that. So much better than that. Anyway, this is encouraging and amazing, and I love it. You also have brought a card deck for our card pull that is very summery and adorable. So this is called the Seashell Oracle.
The Seashell Oracle deck.
I love it.
I'm embracing mermaid magic this summer.
I agree. I think we should be doing that. And we are. We are doing it. Even if it's for the first time.
That's fine, right?
Yes.
Even if it's for the first time.
Yes, totally. Okay. Am I going to draw? Mm-hmm. I'm actually really excited to see what this is. I'm feeling very, summery, positive vibes.
Yes, it's refreshing almost.
See, and I'm also thinking back to our July energy report.
Yeah.
And I just feel like the transitions that are happening, kind of the Neptune retrograde, right? I'm just feeling very looking back, but being no, we're not going back. We're moving forward. It's amazing.
And we're choosing our spots and, choosing what makes us comfortable and, it doesn't, you don't have to stay in the heat. You can find the shade.
Totally.
You can find the sea.
And you can have a nice cool drink.
Oh, yes.
All right.
I always enjoy that.
These are the color of sand
I know, isn't
on the
it
top.
So pretty?
There's a little bit of shiny shimmery.
Yes.
Sorry, I just want to dig in here.
And they're newer, so it's going to be a little harder.
Yeah.
And your nails are giving very
I did super. And look, yours are the ocean.
Oh my gosh.
And then mine are this summer kind of pop art kind of thing.
Coral too.
Oh wow. This says sponge.
Oh, I love this.
Empathy, pragmatism, acceptance.
I mean, that's exactly what we were just talking about.
It literally is exactly what we were just talking about. And this is Cancer season vibes.
100%.
100%. Yep. I think it's interesting too. Sometimes we talk about being a sponge, absorbing and having that be absorbing negative energy or absorbing other people's emotions and being responsible for them. But I really like the angle on this that it really is taking in an accepting way and having empathy and even pragmatism. That's interesting too.
I think that is interesting for sponge. It also connects back to your point earlier about that it's temporary, because whatever is absorbed in a sponge, it eventually comes out as well.
Exactly.
And it comes out a little different. So you absorb it and you sort of process it, and then it flows back out.
It's totally true. And I'll just say the artwork on here is very ethereal, very beautiful. It's kind of like one of those sea sponge kind of things. There's like a woman kind of behind it. She's got kind of a little like posture. She has like a white kind of draped, like almost toga sheet kind of around her.
Yeah.
And then there's like sea and sky and plants behind her. So it's very lovely. Very, very lovely.
It is lovely.
Yeah, this is good.
It's already
right in, matches our little
it's so cute.
centerpiece there. Anyway,
we're doing such a good job.
We really are. And I feel like we really need this kind of energy because today, for our big witch energy, we're doing Shadow Astrology Part 2. Yeah. So we're just right on the heels of Shadow Astrology Part 1.
We are.
Hope you guys are ready for this.
Hope you're ready, and you'll be ready if you watched Part 1 and you've had some time to sit with it. If you haven't watched Part 1, perhaps you should watch that before. Though, you can do what you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all goes together and it all is helpful, but you don't actually have to already have, consumed Part 1 to be ready for Part 2. But I think what I'm thinking about in terms of kind of that empathy and kind of energy is we definitely need that going into this. Yeah. So maybe we'll give a broad definition first of what is shadow astrology.
Right.
This is where we're really going to look at places in your chart, including planets, houses, and other kind of points that you can find on your birth chart to get into what we all have is a shadow side. It's the kind of side of ourselves that is maybe darker qualities, less proud kind of qualities. Yeah. Parts of yourself that you have hidden, maybe that you've disowned, that you've separated from because maybe of shame or insecurity there, or also because sometimes your environment was oppressive and wouldn't allow you to be expressive in certain ways. Anyway, we will definitely get more into all of that. The shadow concept was developed by Carl Jung, who is a psychoanalyst, early days of like the beginning of psychotherapy. And he was a deep person, invented a lot of really cool concepts, and this is one of them. And we apply it to astrology, but he also applied it to astrology and
fancy that
used astrology as a way to help people deeply understand themselves, understand their challenges and their struggles in their lives.
So it was actually valid.
It totally was 100% valid.
Fascinating.
And yeah, I know. What happened since?
Interesting. A lot. We won't get into that.
Well, another episode we probably will. But so anyway, and do you want to add to that intro?
So and I think sometimes, everything that Jackie said was perfect. It perfectly explained it. Only to add, we talked a little bit about this in Part 1, so if you've seen it, you'll be reminded of this. But if you haven't, a shadow side is not inherently negative, and we want to sort of quell the stigma of that wherever there is light, there is shadow, and that it is something that exists and that is necessary, kind of like we were just talking about with the card pull. You need summer just like you need all the other seasons. Everything has its role to play. And our goal here is to sort of delve into the shadows a little bit and make it a place that's not so scary and that you're not so afraid of and that you don't feel deep shame about, but can accept that for what it is and pull it more into balance if it needs to be. Exactly.
So, okay, and we probably will be a few times at least referencing back to Part 1. So like I said, you don't have to have seen that. No. But what we're doing here is different, and so we may be referring back just in contrast in certain ways. So just, be prepared for that. What we're going to start with today, and we'll also in Part 1, Ashley really led that half of it. So I'm kind of leading this half, so you're going to have to bear with me. So what I'm going to start with are the planet placements. Yeah. So as we've talked a lot about the planets and in different episodes kind of highlighted specific planets or the sun and moon luminaries, right? They're not technically planets. But there are these categories that the planets are in, and they're called benefic and malefic. And technically, the only planets that are included in these are Venus, Jupiter, Mars, and Saturn, and the luminaries as well. And other planets can kind of be added into one grouping or the other. But when this all first started, those were the known planets. And so those were the ones that kind of got those official designations. So what do these mean? Okay, so benefic planets are planets that basically have positive energy, that have kind of a lot of goodness to draw from and kind of strengthen yourself, right? So under this, we generally put the sun and the moon both under this, Venus and Jupiter. So I think those make logical sense.
They do.
If you understand the symbolism of Venus, Jupiter, obviously sun and moon. So that would put the malefic planets being Mars and Saturn. And we kind of also put Pluto in there.
Of course.
Kind of also put Uranus in there.
Sure.
Neptune is kind of a coin flip, which way it can go, depending.
That also makes a lot of sense.
Right? Yeah. So the point of this also, like Ashley was just saying about some of the general shadow concept, the point is not, well, these are good planets and these are bad planets,
Right.
and if they're in a good place or a bad place. The point is that Mars and Saturn, also like Pluto and Uranus, tend to indicate places of tension, places of where you might be carrying baggage.
Yeah.
And that's how it kind of starts to indicate where some of your shadow places might be. And by places, I mean what houses those planets are in.
Yeah.
Will show you what area of your life you may need to overcome more challenges in. And the reason that's a shadow place is because it's hard to have tension in a life area.
Exactly.
And it's hard to face usually repeated similar challenges and patterns of challenge. So those are two, well, mainly Mars and Saturn, but also the others that I mentioned, are some planets that you can look at and kind of see maybe how those make sense, where they maybe have already played out in your life.
It does make sense, even in terms of the way that we discuss those planets, even just you and I, the way that we discuss these planets and luminaries, like we definitely have preferences towards energies in, we love Venus. We always stand Venus.
Totally.
And love the moon. The moon can do no wrong, even though she's super chaotic. We're like, she's fine. We love this.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, the other planets are the places and the energies that we struggle with a little bit more.
Yes. And like I was saying, the houses are important, but also the sign that those planets are in.
Absolutely.
In combination with the house. So just to say for myself, I feel like I have a really weird kind of interaction in my chart with some of these things. One of them is that, I'm an Aries rising. So Mars is my chart ruler.
Yeah.
So I could have really like a tendency to maybe be overly aggressive or overly pushy, just in general, like that kind of filters throughout your entire chart. But my actual Mars placement is in Libra in my 7th house, which is literally the opposite of Aries. So there's a lot of weird, anyways, and I'll say a little bit more about it. But just to use myself as an example of as soon as I see that, even if I haven't fully thought through what it all means, when I see it, I'm like, oh, like somehow this is clicking for me.
Yeah. And you can see like the discrepancy kind of pop up. Yes. And then, and again, that doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, then that's like always going to be terrible or hard to navigate. Sometimes that's the reason why you have those like opposing sort of forces, because there is balance there. But it's really hard to just achieve. That's not just like going to happen. You really have to work at achieving that, and understanding that and knowing that helps you to do it.
Well, yeah, and sometimes you think you are working on it.
Yeah.
And then you find that you're not, or it's not getting the result that you want because maybe some things I'm still not acknowledging within myself.
Totally.
And that's those shadow aspects of like, it's not just, oh, all these people that I'm meeting are acting this way. It's like, oh, how am I acting? And then it kind of harkens back to some of the things from part 1 for each sign, kind of what are the difficult kind of tendencies that can come out. So again, referring back to that. So I'm also getting already into one of your major shadow places to look is your descendant. So your ascendant is your rising sign. So as I just explained with myself, my ascendant is Aries. my descendant is Libra.
Yeah.
Which is also what my Mars is in. You know, and Mars is my chart ruler. So anyway, again, just for me, you can see how these things kind of,
totally,
you know, repeat. But so whatever your rising sign is, the opposite sign is your descendant.
Oh,
so yours is Sagittarius, right? Which is also your moon. Right?
Why'd you have to bring me up?
Well, you are part of the Dumb Witch Club.
I think that it's easy for us to play in the shade and not easy for us to play in the shadow.
That's such a good distinction.
Yeah. Because, I'll shade all day. Like, I'll read the funny memes and the things that, you know, kind of poke fun at the different, like, energies. And I'm like, haha, that's totally me. Toxica. Like, I'll, you know, embrace that. But as soon as it gets to that level, I'm like, what? No, that has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
But it has everything to do with
But it has everything to do with everything. No, literally. So why is the descendant the shadow? It's because it's the opposite side.
Yeah.
And, like, I think it's really reflected a lot in what Ashley talked about in part 1 as well. That the advice for how to kind of counteract some of those worst tendencies of each sign really is embodying what is present in that polarity energy of each sign. Yeah. So that's, you know, all of them have the balance and the counterbalance within them. We just have to develop that further. There's another concept too that, like, within your ascendant and your descendant, that it really is like half and half. And that you are sort of charged to bring the halves together. And I think that integration is also really part of this shadow concept. It's not about denying what's in the shadow.
Right.
It's about bringing it, maybe not into the light, but into the shade.
Into the shade.
At the very least.
They, like, meet in the shade. Yeah, it's very fascinating. And I think when people, if you've never thought about your descendant, never knew how to figure it out, or never known what it is, like, a lot of people are going to be going through this moment right now, like, that's part of me.
Yes.
Okay.
And if you've heard us talk about how we feel about Libra energy, like, I feel like so weird and bad.
I mean, yes, we definitely have, and that I can totally see where you're coming from. If you've heard the way that we talk about the challenging aspects of Sagittarius.
Yes, 100%.
I, like, don't want to accept that. I don't want to accept that.
My Pluto's also in Libra.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I don't want...
No! We're giving a lot right now. Like, this is... I just have to, like, pause and just congratulate us for doing this, because this is not easy.
No, it's not easy. And I really thought, like, okay, I'm just going to use myself as an example to illustrate this stuff.
Yeah.
And now that I'm doing it, I'm like, why did I do that? That was so stupid. But I'm also like, oh, it was probably like the Leo sun in me that was like, just use yourself. It's great, girl. And then this other stuff is like, why are you doing this?
And the other stuff is like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's what you
want to do? Okay, here, show this. And you're like, well, I didn't want to... Actually, I want to show that.
So we have the planet placements, or those planets with the different energies that I was talking about. So we have your descendant as a place to look. We also have your south node as a place to look. So sometimes when you get your birth chart report, it'll tell you what your north node is. And same thing, it's the opposite of whatever that is for you.
Yeah.
So, I'm like, mine is in Aquarius. Because my north node is in Leo, just like my sun and my moon. Yeah. Which for a lot of people, it's not. It's not necessarily the same as your sun sign or moon or anything like that.
Right.
But mine is, which means my south node is Aquarius. And you've also heard how we talk about Aquarius energy and
definitely. They're like, oh, yeah,
difficult that is.
They're like, oh yeah, we have notes. The Aquariuses are like, yeah, we know.
They're like, come up, it's happening right now. Okay, so why does your south node indicate your shadow or this kind of stuff? It's because your north node indicates the qualities that when you are striving and building and thriving, you are moving towards those types of qualities. So it's your north node is always positive, and it's always something that you are striving and building towards in your life. So in a way, it's a challenging spot too, because you're not there yet perfectly, but you should be striving more for those things, right? Your south node is really a place where you can over rely on those qualities as a way to not grow.
Oh, man.
And I think the irony there for my placement is actually really clear to me. Relying on being detached and rebellious and needing to be really unique and separate instead of striving to like grow into an authentic, shining self that also incorporates, like we said in part one, boosting other people up and so forth. So, yeah, I feel extremely called out by this one.
Yeah, mine's...
What do you know your nodes? I mean, what are they?
My north node is in Scorpio, so my south node's in Taurus.
Yeah.
And...
Which is interesting because your sun is also in Scorpio, obviously. And that's not the case for everybody. So it's interesting.
Yeah. And it at first, I think, well, I would, and then I think people would be like, I don't see like a lot of like those qualities with you, like the earth sign Taurus quality. I don't see that. Definitely, my tendency to rely on that is very much to stay in my hole and not go out and surround myself with the things that are comforting and that I like, and drown in nostalgia and buying myself little treats. You don't have to have a little treat every time you go out, but when your south node is in Taurus, then yes, you do.
Yeah, because it's the only way you can like get yourself to do stuff.
Yeah, that's what you tell yourself. It's the only way and you deserve it, right? You deserve it. You deserve it because you work hard, and so you deserve it. And I hate this activity.
Yeah, it's really... It's interesting, and we haven't talked about it yet really in this episode, but in the first episode we talked a lot about shame, the emotion of shame. Yeah. And I think what you're seeing is us acknowledging and kind of having that shame kind of creep up. And it's a natural human emotion, and it's often an emotion that is sort of projected onto us because the world, society, our families, whatever, don't always function in a way that allows us to be our authentic selves.
Right.
And so that's part of how the shadow works too, is it's like the things that have kind of been, maybe made fun of or looked down on or just not allowed in various ways, which you're unconscious of.
Yeah. And I think it hits a tender part too, because sometimes like that, what you develop in the south node in that reliance it's born out of a reliance on that to feel safe.
Yes.
And so then when you start confronting what might be unhealthy about that, it's really going into a lot of deep wounds of, yes, I did this because if I didn't, then I didn't feel worthy, or like I didn't feel safe, and this is the only way that I had comfort for myself is to do this, because otherwise everything was a mess and chaotic and people were angry and screaming or whatever. And so, these comforting things made me feel good. And so to confront that is like,
Yes, and what you're saying is leading me into the next sort of point in your birth chart that you can look at for maybe where some shadow work might need to be done is sometimes it's abbreviated IC, or sometimes it's called under sky.
Yeah.
And this is the sign that is on your 4th house, which is opposite of your 10th house, which is more your like public kind of proud shining self. So this underneath one is really about family dynamics. It's about kind of the ways that as a young child you could find comfort in coping with an environment that you had no control over. And even if your home environment was not traumatic or not chaotic and like rather good. Nothing is perfect, and no environment or person or mother or father can meet anyone's needs perfectly. So we all have some wounding to look at there. So that's kind of the place, your fourth house, and specifically that's called your under sky point, is another place to look for this. And this starts to get kind of into like, you know, early life, inner child kind of things, which I think we're going to talk more about in a future episode, just like this by itself. But just to mention, this is sort of another really tender place. And, you know, for me, that's Cancer. Cancer's on my under sky, and Cancer's also my Venus, and so it's just a very like emotional, like tender place.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
like in such great ways, but also like, you know, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I don't know mine off the top of my head. Yours makes a lot of sense though.
Yeah, and if you don't know these off the top of your head either, obviously consult your chart and look them up. Like these are some of the kind of lesser mentioned kind of points in your chart. You know, we don't always all know them. Mine are easy to know because as an Aries rising, it just follows in order, you know? So that's why mine are easy to know for me, because it's just the order they go in. But anyway, that is another place to look. So as I was starting to mention, the fourth house is a place to look for shadow stuff. Another place to look is your eighth house, which is called, you know, Scorpio house, but it's the place of destruction and creation, death and fear. If you have planets that are in that house, especially those malefic planets, this can be a place in life where it's really highlighting, and it doesn't mean that your struggles are with sex and death and those topics exactly.
Right.
If you have a planet in there, what that planet represents is going to really be what is highlighted. If you have no planets in there, then yeah, it might be in that kind of realm of those taboo subjects in life, because that's just what the eighth house represents. But depending on what sign that is in your chart, will also indicate more about how that will play out for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that can be like more on like a, it doesn't necessarily have to be like your specific sexual function. Like there's a lot of, you know, complexities to these things, and sort of death is such a broad concept, right? So it doesn't necessarily, like sometimes I think like in pop astrology, they're like, oh, you know, you're going to see a lot of death or like whatever. Like you might not, like you really might not. It's just more of like, could be your relationship to it, or maybe there's like one traumatic situation that kind of like dictates a lot of other, you know, ways that you sort of formulate your opinions about death. It can be very complex, and it's really, really personal. So it's up to you to kind of like interpret that. And as you can see here, this is not easy to do and comfortable to do. So, and it's not anything that you have to just completely do an exercise and be done with it and be like, okay, I guess I understand this now. That's never going to happen. I mean, over the course of your life, that you'll have more insight, but even then, I don't think you're ever going to figure it all out. That's not possible.
And I think that is kind of something to remember, like moving gently into these spaces. And for me, just writing this out and then writing out like what all these points were sign-wise and house-wise for me, and just kind of making a list in a way, like without even deep dive analyzing all of it. Like I said, I could see like, oh, all of those are there, or oh, this one's here and this one's in the opposite spot. Like I could just see things, and it just already helped. I mean, it feels kind of not great.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't do anything with it, I didn't like cry and have a big meltdown. You know, It was just kind of going like, ooh, oh, okay. Like all of that is there, you know? So just going through and looking in your chart information and like writing out what all these points are for you, I think is the way to begin here.
I agree.
And then just sit with it. Like you said, just kind of sit with it, come back to it, reflect on it, think about it, whatever. That's how you start. Actually, and I'm going to get into a couple of more tools that you can use to start this whole process. But before I do that, I'm just going to say the last house to really look for shadow work, and this one makes a lot of sense, is your 12th house. So that's the house of, you know, your unconscious self. It's also a house of delusion, confusion, blending of, you know, self and universe in addiction, kind of these things that can obviously be harmful. So really taking an honest look at that, whatever the sign is of that house, or if you do happen to have planets in that house, you could really struggle more with those types of things. And again, the point of the shadow work is not just to say like, oh yeah, that's in my chart and I'm always going to have these and I just suck and I'm awful.
Right.
The point is to say like, oh my gosh, like this is a place I really need to work. And it's literally the opposite of just saying like, oh, well, that's in my chart and that's just me. It's the opposite of that. Your chart is showing you, do some work here. Like actively acknowledge how hard these struggles have been for you. Actively work on reducing the shame that led to those behaviors or the shame that is involved in those behaviors.
Yes.
So the point is to be hopeful, actually.
Yes, and I love that you said that because I think it's very encouraging and I think everyone needs to hear it. I also think that it is another emphasis on your point from the first part of this series which I told her that I had never thought about it like this, but she did and she brought it up and I've actually never heard anyone say this, so I'm glad that she did. You also don't want to like lean into this as like some kind of banner, like becoming the Joker type of thing, because that is super dangerous behavior. And there's obviously, we're talking about a lot of big concepts here and we're not, treating anybody on this podcast.
This is not a substitute for therapy
or
professional advice.
No, please do not treat it as such, because these concepts are big and they're complicated and they're very personal. Yeah. But there is a fine line between like shame and what you're describing there. And navigating over that can be very challenging. And sometimes we need help to do that. In many occasions we do. I think everybody could use therapy and everybody could use help to do that.
Totally.
Because it can swing to the other side. And that might be surprising to some people even listening to this. Other people might be like, oh yeah, I've been there. And sometimes it's not, your whole approach to your whole life, but there's seasons of it,
Yes, there was like a time period where like,
oh yeah,
you really were out of control or didn't have self-awareness, and maybe that was partly intentional. You're like in denial, basically.
Yeah, or being like, what, like this is how the world is going to be, or this is what's going to be. And so, and that is kind of when you start to lean into those shadow sides. I have definitely been there.
Oh, 100%. Definitely.
And was like, I have no regrets about this. And now looking back on it, I'm like, should have had regrets about that.
Well, I know. And I feel like the looking back, I think, has, and that's another kind of step. So now that I've named all of those places in your chart where you can take a look and kind of, starting off maybe listing these and kind of identifying, the signs and seeing if there's any overlap or patterns or things like that you can just see. So that's kind of that step. And then another step, I think, is looking back over your life in a really honest way and seeing, like, what were the time periods where maybe some of this played out. And like I was going to just say, looking back, I think for me, yes, sometimes I always say I don't have regrets about anything, and I really don't. But I can see the pain that I was in that led to my behavior and my choices at a lot of points in my life.
Very much.
And at the time, I was not aware of the pain. I was not letting myself feel that hurt. And so now I can see it when I look back. And I feel like so much love and compassion and sadness for that past me.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. And I don't really think that's exactly regret, but it's definitely something more evolved than whatever, I don't care, it doesn't matter.
Yes, it is definitely something more evolved than that. And I think that's important, because we do have to care about how we're treating ourselves. We do have to care about how we're treating others. That's what we're meant to do here.
Yes.
In this human form that we're stuck in. That is what we're meant to do here. And so it is important to do that, as painful as that can be. And it really, really can be. So you just take it at your own pace and get the support and the help that you need to do so, but you will be better off for it. Any type of work, even the smallest amount of this, is going to benefit you to do.
And another kind of step or tool along a journey about doing shadow work is doing like a family tree. Or sometimes in the therapy world, it's actually called a genogram. And you don't have to look that up or do it in that official therapeutic way. But what it really means is not just looking at your family tree like these are the names and these are the dates of the people, but looking at what were the things going on with those people.
Yeah.
What were their struggles that were known or diagnosed or undiagnosed? But like looking back, it was undiagnosed, but pretty sure grandma had bipolar disorder, you know, things like that, or struggled with addiction, or had, divorce in your family, or abuse of some kind, different things like that. So it's really kind of making a family tree and going through as many generations as you know about, and really looking at what were the things that they struggled with, because that can kind of lead you to have a better understanding of yourself and how you got maybe where you are and how you maybe inherited things that aren't yours to hold, and some of that stuff is in your chart, like in that fourth house kind of place and things like that. So that's another kind of tool that you can use to gain insight and hopefully compassion for yourself in all of this.
Absolutely.
And the last sort of tool is, I think, a little more accessible, although also not. It's a little less intimidating, I'll say, which is dream journaling.
Oh, heck yeah.
Okay. So what you're looking for when you're dream journaling eventually is symbolism and patterns. But you don't really see those right away necessarily. No. But all you do, and it's not easy because it's hard to remember to do it, and you forget your dreams really quickly. So as soon as you wake up, you have to write down your dream. Because as soon as you wake up, you're likely to remember. But if you wait, and I know you all know this, if you wait like 10 minutes and you tell yourself, ooh, I'm going to remember this because I'm going to tell Ashley about it, or I'm going to tell someone about it. That was so weird. And I forgot.
Yeah, you lose it.
So you have to write it down right away. And I have had seasons in my life where I have dream journaled, and it wasn't even like every day, but it was just maybe a couple times a week, but over time. And it's very interesting, and I've gone back and read them at times later, and it's been really cool. So that's another way to kind of get, and this kind of came from Carl Jung himself. He really believed that there was a lot of symbolism and that dreams allowed you into sort of a collective unconscious where you were tapping into really deeply just human symbolism. Yeah. Not every dream is wildly symbolic either. Some are just weird, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, dream journaling is another place to kind of get into your shadow stuff.
Interesting.
Yes.
I like it. That is accessible. I can do that.
Yeah. You don't have to be too scared, right?
No, I can do that.
Whew, okay, so that was all of that.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. But it's necessary because we are dumb witches, and we're proud of that. And you should be too.
Totally.
But, yes, totally. At all times. Represent Dumb Witch Club. But, we want to improve as people. And we want to improve as witches. And we want to be the best we can be for ourselves and for everyone around us. And we can still be dumb about it. You're still, even with all of this information, you're still going to know. Like, there's going to be so much stuff you still don't know forever.
Totally.
You do not have to give up that badge. But attempting to take care of yourself and understand this better is going to make you better. And we want that for you, just like we want it for each other and for ourselves. So.
Yes. Yay. So, all right. That was a really nice note to end on because I was feeling kind of bleh about all of that stuff.
I
know. But then, it's all good.
It's all good.
It's all okay. Because you're a whole person, and the universe is holding you and loves you.
And you're perfect, just the way you are.
Definitely. Aww. All right. Until next time.
Stay witchy, friends.
And stay dumb.
Dumb Witch Club is written and hosted by us, Ashley Sidner.
And Jackie Gerard at the Dumb Witch Clubhouse in Orange County, California.
Produced and edited by Matt Heinemeyer. Art direction by Violet Turner. Culture consultant, Jane Turner.
Original music by Ashley Sidner. Look us up on all your favorite social media platforms, including TikTok and Patreon.
Until next time, stay witchy, friends.
And stay dumb.